Hello and welcome to another video. So we're covering the unlimited version of the Dark-Faced Bats. Actually, sorry, we're covering the rotation version. The unlimited version is the one we did cover of the Dark-Faced Bat deck, so just keeping that in mind. The rotation variation of the deck isn't quite as good, of course. It runs pretty much the same base package, but missing out on a lot of the nice extras like Bloodcraft Foulbird, which makes a huge difference to the deck. This one also has a pretty nice playpoint recovery engine in it, which seems to do okay and can definitely help out in some matchups, but overall this deck just isn't quite strong enough in the whole overall rotation format. Blood is really lacking in the format and it can be really difficult. You could also run Jorm in place of these Succubus Lils, but personally I just find Jorm to be too easily countered and too easily removed these days to really get that damage in, so going with these at least can give you a good way to get lots of value out of low end cards when you don't have Vera or you just can't get something like that on board. So we're going to go in and check this out and see how it goes. So definitely unlike the unlimited format, this deck struggles at keeping itself viable just because of the fact that dealing self damage and not being able to heal well enough can be a huge problem. While you run a lot of these similar engine cards, those fine extra ones really help out a lot with this deck and making it more consistent. So definitely would recommend using the unlimited variation instead of this variation, as I feel like that is a better one to go with. But it'll be interesting to see where Blood is at with the next set, so we'll have to wait and see where that goes. So starting us off, of course, pretty standard plays. Perish is a good start. You know, it gets you a draw, which is always good in this kind of deck, so that's always nice. Plus the self damage. The more you can build up your self damage counter, the better off your Dark-Faced Bat and Evil Eyes will be. So while Evil Eye is a really nice card, I just don't think rotation has the other cards to support it enough that it can be really viable. It works well in situations like this where rune is just pretty heavy on the follower counts. Once you get to the kind of snowman turns, that's where a card like Evil Eye Demon comes in handy, or against some Earthright variants it can be quite good. But we start off well. Like I said, getting these playpoint recoverers out early can definitely help you out. We do pretty much run out of space here though, which is a little disappointing. But the self-damage that we can do is pretty crazy. I did have to decide on where I wanted to take this, and going with Madness seemed like the way to do it. I wasn't expecting Rune to be able to take me down from 5 on turn 5, because I haven't really seen too many crazy things come out of it, so at best they might be able to get 2 or 3 damage in, but I just didn't think 5 would be a huge possibility. Even Ars Mangus would have only been 3 on its own, and that would have been their entire turn, so I was actually really comfortable with this. Getting a nice heal for 8, taking us to 12. And probably just setting up another one, because, I mean, turn 6 is a very similar story to turn 5. There isn't a lot they can do without prior setup. And we are actually pretty much set at this point. I mean, a Dark-Faced Bat's at 10 damage. All we need to do is survive. With Evil Eye Demon and an Evo point, that should be fairly easy to do. So then it shouldn't matter what they really play from here. As long as we wipe this out, we should be fine.
It won't be long now.
Magic Owl's really just no threat at this point. And turn 7 for Rune doesn't hold a lot of danger. Similar with Portal situation, they don't hold a lot of danger on turn 7. That's why this deck seems to do quite well in the Rune and Portal matchups. They just don't have that damage on 7 to really counter Dark-Faced Bat. Dark-Faced Bat will usually close out the game if you've had a pretty average game. Although being an Abyss Summoner deck, this was actually more interesting for me, because I could have been screwed over if it had been a lot stronger in the early game, but fortunately for us, it really wasn't. And the next game is against Portal. As I mentioned, these are probably one of the better matchups overall. It can still be a difficult matchup, but it's definitely a better one. Personally, when I was playing a lot of Portal for Grand Prix and things like that, Blood was quite a common enemy, and one that I actually wasn't very favoured against. So it's not a big surprise. As for Rune, I found Rune wasn't too bad to kill. But we start off with an okay hand. I mean, getting the Blazing Sapphire I think is still a pretty key card in this deck as well. It definitely helps out with the draw and self damage over in the overall. I mean, Blood Pack's good, but Blazing Sapphire just feels that little bit better because you can really set it up. Because you can easily play this Sapphire and then go into Vera later on to not so much negate it, but really kind of limit what can be done to you. I just feel like Vera is just that strong in this deck. Being able to negate self-damage but still build up your counter is absolutely insane. So I get a chance to use Snarling Chains. I'll go for another Alexandrite because I don't really have a chance to use those otherwise. If you don't get them out in the early game, you really will struggle. So they get the Puppet, not a surprise. We have our Vera, which is going to be a pretty nice play this turn. I do go for the draw first, which I felt was the best option. And a nice Vera play, going to clear the 3-3 with only taking 1 damage, and even allowing me to go for the gifts just to build up counters. Although I probably should have held the gifts to use the Demonic Rams for massive heals, but I don't feel like they're worthwhile unless you do combo them with a Vera as well, so I would have needed to use all of them next turn anyway, and it would have felt pretty lackluster. Well, we should have a pretty okay next turn anyway. So we should be able to go for our Demonic Ram pretty comfortably. Going for both of them shouldn't really be a problem. We're not going to have to use our Vera because there wasn't a big threat to really deal with. And we heal max anyway. Which is another good thing about this deck. Being able to heal up really does make it hard on Portal and Rune decks in particular. Of course, this deck will be pretty easily crushed by Haven normally, which isn't usually a surprise. Unless, of course, you know, you can get them down enough that they can't quite heal out of range, but that's kind of more luck-based at that point. So this one's a little rough. I was trying to decide how I should have played it out, and I think in the end I made an okay choice. I probably could have done better, but I was really looking for the Regain and Evo card. That way I could have comboed it with Vera. That's why I played the way I did for that match, with the draws first. And we weren't in range of lethal anyway, so all we really needed to do was buff up our Dark Feast bats enough to reach lethal on our own. Which we should pretty easily have at this point. I mean, Dark Feast bat, the 1-3, even drawing the Gift of the Bloodkin, really put us well and truly into lethal range. So while I'm a big fan of Blood decks, unfortunately in rotation, Blood really is lacking in power compared to a lot of the other crafts at the moment, and it's no big surprise. Most decks will drop down over time as new expansions roll out and others will take their place. Rune seems to be the most consistently topping deck when it comes to metas, but for the most part, I mean, you can't really complain too much. Most decks get their spotlight, one deck will always shine in one way or another. Blood's had a few times where it's been quite powerful, especially, of course, if anyone remembers Wonderland Dreams. That was a pretty nuts time, so I'm quite happy to settle for Blood being good and unlimited right now and just playing around with other decks until we can get some good support for it in the future, I hope. So if you guys did enjoy this video, hit the like button and subscribe. You'll find this deck list in the description below, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.